Here at the Giver Marketing Network, we don't leave you drifting out in space. We connect you to a coach who will help you build and grow your marketing business. Our process acts as a guide on how to connect with other businesses, maintain good relations, and establish a presence on the Giver Marketing Network. Each member within this collaborative group will have the opportunity to leverage your talent and influence, a true network effect. If you are looking to collaborate on more projects, welcome to the Giver Marketing Network, the most trusted and highest rated collective of specialists on the planet. Here we have a group of like-minded professionals who focus on making valuable introductions and helping each other grow by teaming up. Imagine Upwork meets a network and a coach. The talent collectively includes services like visibility and SEO, creating logos, designing websites, managing social media, outreach messaging, visual storytelling, and much more. Think of what you could do with laser-focused allies, strengthening your business while offering your talents to the entire network. Click near this video for more information.
Hello, and welcome. We are so excited. It's another Tuesday marketing broadcast with Giver Marketing, and I'm Christine Deane, Team Director. Excited to have Andy Bunch on the show today. Hi, Andy.
Hey, Lee. Hey, how's it going?
Oh, I'm so excited. We're going to have so much fun today. Your skill set, oh my goodness, it's one of those like others wish they had. You're like magical. Just one, you're the magical unicorn of being able to, write things without AI. I mean, fascinating, right? People do that still. You come with a rich background. Talk to us. So those that haven't met you yet, Andy, tell us, how did you get where you are today?
Well, I was actually the original failure to launch guy. My parents didn't have a basement, or I would have lived there if I could. But, I spent 10 years in college pursuing a degree at least, and got a couple of them, but wasn't sure what I, was going to do for my passion. I floated job to job. I was single till I was 40, although I was working on myself by then. But I come from a family of achievers. My grandfather was, he owned a dairy and was a college professor. So up at 5 a.m., milk the cows, go teach college class, come home, eat dinner, grade papers, or milk the cows again, and then eat dinner, grade papers. My dad graduated from that university, got his engineering degree, married my mom, and went to work for Bonneville Power Administration, started inventing things like a carburetor that runs on flour, and fault finding device. They could tell where power lines were down within a quarter of a mile. Then satellites came along and they can spot them from space now. But so the high achievers. Dad's IQ was 20 points above Einstein's. It was brilliant. And we moved to this little tiny house on the river. I call it the house on the river, but it was one main room and then a kitchen and some bedrooms and stuff. And we heated it with wood fireplace and stuff, and no TV. So everybody read books and stuff, except I couldn't read books yet. So I sat in my dad's lap and just, watched him read. And so I've known I wanted to be a writer since I was 7 years old. And, but I kind of had this learning disability, I was a really slow reader, and I couldn't spell. And of course, no one diagnosed it. They just said, right, if you would just try, if you could just.
Right. Back in those days, you just need to put more effort into it, right? My brother had a learning disability, with reading, dyslexia, right? And they weren't diagnosing that back then. I remember we used to get him comic books to encourage him to want to read, right? And so there's so much more to it. I mean, where we were then versus where we are now, crazy, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my daughter, I was concerned about her having dyslexia. So I, just because I had it, and I thought, well, maybe it's hereditary and stuff. So I tried to find a place that would get her checked out, and it was extremely difficult. There just aren't resources. And I thought the public school system would provide that as sort of a standard screening sort of thing. And public school said, well, that's really expensive. And we would do it if we had to, but most kids find their own workaround if you just leave them to their own devices. You know, their brains are malleable and they train themselves. And I'm like, but you're the education system.
Right.
Shouldn't you be helping people learn how to learn? So I had a lot of struggles. Obviously, big beef with, you know, the public school official institutional structure of learning, a lot because they told me that I just was underperforming because I was lazy. And
that's a great way to explain learning disabilities.
Yeah.
or any kind. Seriously? Wow.
If you just tried, you know. So, you know, I became obsessed with proving them wrong. And I spent all my time in college trying to find a plan B, something else I could do for a living, when obviously writing was the one thing I wanted to do and the only thing I was never going to be allowed to do. I was supposed to never, ever be successful at it. And so then when my dad died in 2003, I had to stop and take stock and figure out, why do I want to write? What's really behind this? What's the source of power? And explore creativity and story. Why do I need to write? And how do I make this work? And so, you know, I took a grief recovery method, became a specialist, completed my relationship, not only with my dad, but with the education system, with myself, and where I was at with all that. And it really helped out a lot. In fact, I became a big fan of story, looking at your own story and rewriting your stories. And so I started helping people sort of rewrite their stories. That's a big piece of it, you know.
You're singing to my heart. I love this, Andy, right? The idea of rewriting your story, right? It's all about perspective.
Yeah. So that's, you know, that was the core. And I thought, I'm going to be a coach. That's going to be it. I'm going to be a coach. And that's what it's all about. But it always pulled me back to writing, because it was always the writing tools and learning about story. What is, you know, the hero's journey? What is the character? What is setting? You know, all of this fed into helping people rewrite their stories. And also I realized that grief was only like one modality things came out with. It was, you know, if you ever read Noah Elias, Fear Hunter, that's a fantastic book. And he kind of makes the point that the same thing that's going on with grief is going on with fear and going on with shame. You know, they're all kind of rolled up into holding you back and belief systems and stuff. So that's the whole coaching side of things. And I'm always available to do that sort of things with people. But I wanted to get back to writing. When my daughter was born, I thought, I've got to make this writing thing work. And so I switched over to copywriting, started studying copywriting, which seemed like it was everything but story. And then eventually, of course, that drifted back to story and also. So it kind of sits right there in the center. Story, character, writing, it's all in the center. It can be applied different places to help people. Because if you can't communicate your value, if you don't understand your value, then you can't heal your story. And if you don't understand your value, you can't tell people why they should do business with you. And that's why the theme of this whole thing is building trust. It's really about communicating value without sounding like, and we've all written a resume and we've all sat down and thought, this is horrible. I'm just talking about me. I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. And it doesn't tell anybody who I am. I'm just recounting to you, you know, my successes.
Well, so that's what we're going to focus on today, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking forward to. You want me to pull the slides up?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's dive in.
So building trust through professional narrative and content. That was sort of a fancy thing, fancy way of expressing, you know, story, because we use story for illustrating points. But we also use story for our origin story. And we use story sort of individually when we're copywriting too. But let's just move on to the next one. I guess, are you advancing or am I advancing?
You're advancing. I'm leaving you in charge of it. This way you can go at your pace. If I push it, I'm going to push it too fast or something.
How do I advance slides? Oh, there it appears.
Yeah, next slide. There you go.
All right. So yeah, I love this. I love how this is stated. You know, in today's content-rich environment, being an expert isn't enough. Taste is key. This is the shift that AI is doing to us, guys. Right? If people talk about, well, AI then we won't need copywriters anymore. Like, you know, word processors didn't put copywriters into business, and neither will AI. It's because trust is essential to business growth and audience engagement and successful client relationships. Right. This is why This is why it's so much easier to resell a client. You're 60 to 70% more likely to resell the same person because trust has already been built,
Mm-hmm.
and so what trust does for us is it reduces that internal resistance and all that. There's two reasons why we struggle with content when it comes to so trust is important for all these reasons on the screen, but why is content hard for us as business owners when we aren't professional writers or whatever like that? And the first thing is having to DIY everything, and having to keep up with the latest thing. And now there's another AI that I have to learn or whatever, or do I have to learn it? Or, am I spending too much money on outsourcing it and stuff? And really the answer to that is you want to outsource it if beyond a certain point. If it's getting in the way of you working in your business, then bring somebody on board who can take that off of your hands. And then that's the first key to success with content, really. It's asking yourself if you want to do it yourself, or is that even smart? Be your own CEO, guide yourself, coach yourself. The second thing is you feel like you're giving away your secrets all the time. You feel like I have to generate all this content and it has to come out of what works for me. And you're intimately aware of everything, every nuance of what it takes to do what you do. And so you feel like if I talk about all the nerdy stuff, then people will understand it and then they'll replace me, right? Because I'll have given away all my secrets and stuff. And today's we're going to talk, this presentation is going to focus on a specific strategy, but really one of the points I want you to walk away with, even if it's nothing else, is that alignment and integrity and authenticity are what build trust. And so there's kind of a secret way to give away a little bit less and have it land a little bit better and do the work of building trust without having to give away all of your trade secrets. So so the overview of this whole thing would be grabbing attention, keeping attention, maintaining relationship, and then we'll wrap up and we'll view it all. But I put some stuff in here. I actually didn't know quite the format, so when I was preparing the slides, I put in some who am I stuff. So we'll skip those slides and pick up some.
It's all good. We're just rolling with it, right?
Right. I feel like my slides got out of order somehow.
Well, so we've got the grabbing attention origin story.
All right. Yeah. There we go. We'll get my notes caught up to everything. So obviously we're trying to, this is a unique approach. Okay. So articulating your origin story and tying it to your value proposition is a pretty specialized skill. This is going to be one of those things, you guys, where I've been doing it now, working on all this and building this and writing professionally for 30 years. And so for me, this is a pretty straightforward process. And when I think back over the first 5 or even 10 years of doing it, I would say that's not at all. This is the hard part. Even I can give you, and I will, if you hang on till the end, we'll share with you some templates and stuff for writing your origin story and that sort of thing. So you can DIY.
For those that aren't familiar with origin story, you want to talk for a moment about what that is?
Yeah. If you focus on, well, I don't know, my approach to origin story kind of comes out of the coaching background sort of thing, right? One of the things we need to do is we need to be aware of all of the pain points and best points and stuff in our personal history. So you would do sort of a personal history list. I like a sticky note exercise. So sitting down with a whole bunch of sticky notes and just writing one thing you remember from the past on it, and then pull it off and stick it on, and write the next thing you remember and pull it off and stick it on it. And then you get 50 or 60 of these things even, and then go through and rewrite the ones that you feel negative. They were a hit or something like that. Rewrite those onto a different color. Usually I like to use red, which the closest you can get in sticky notes is pink. And it works out, really grabs your attention, right? And then I take a big foam core board or something like that, and I put them in chronological order. And then you can kind of categorize them into columns of, it might be, this is grade school, or it might be this one, we lived in this one place and then we moved here and then there was college. And then, whatever categories make sense to you is fine. Just kind of group them. And then we're looking at those pink notes. What is it that you overcame? What is the key pivotal moment that transitioned you from I was here and now I'm here? And what did you learn? That's kind of your life message when you really think about it. Your career message, at the very least, is what did I learn that got me my breakthrough? Because someone needs that breakthrough. So origin story for me encapsulates all of that. I don't know if you guys have a special definition for it.
I love that holistic approach, Andy, the idea of looking back at your past and seeing all the steps that have created who you are today. Right. And at the time, it may have been a really tough struggle that we've gone through. Right. But what did we learn from that? And how has that shaped who we are and how we've moved forward? Right. I love that approach.
Yeah. And really, ultimately, hopefully, across the course of your life, you're taking a look at all of the pink sticky notes. You're really, sometimes it comes down to grief recovery. You might write a letter or something to that. If it's a person, they might be gone. They might be not in your story, passed away, whatever it is. And you just sort of need to be able to tell them, these are the things that you said and did, and this is how I felt it. And then this is what I'm going to do about it. Typically something along the lines of forgiving them, not even because they deserve it, but because you need to walk away. Sometimes you're like, I've carried this for 20 years. I'm going to set it down right there and I'm just going to move on.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. When I was teaching college and communications courses, and I would ask the students what their favorite activity was, the forgiveness one was exactly what you're talking about. Write a letter to someone in their past and how those behaviors impact them. That's life-changing. That was overall, time and again, their favorite activity, which really tells you how much we carry those around with us and impact who we are. So making a list on that to figure out your origin story and your impact and where you've come, and it makes total sense. I love that approach.
Yeah, once you've done that, it's sort of like feels like a big ordeal or something like that, but you can take a week out and do it. Working with somebody really, really, really helps. But once you've done that, then you can continue to mine that. You mine that for healing of the past, and you mine that for messaging going forward. You can really look into what did it feel like to be me before my breakthrough? And that gives you language which will help you build trust with people who are there right now. That's the ultimate secret to trust, is if you can articulate somebody's emotions better than they are. The emotions they're feeling right now with them, they can't even say them. They can't get them out because it hurts so bad. And you say it to them and they will trust you. And the other thing that makes them really want to trust you is when you can read them with purpose. When you start seeing, hey, you've got this inside you, and you can see it pretty obvious. Once you start becoming aware of somebody's story, you're like, hey, I bet you're going to be really, really talented at fixing this problem or at helping people understand this problem. And they're like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then people tend to trust you. They tend to love you because of that sort of thing. So
right, and the more authentic you are, the more aligned you can be with whoever it is that you're trying to help. Makes sense.
Absolutely. Authenticity is the cornerstone of all of this. And so copy, when it's done well, you're doing it long distance to people you haven't even met. Your familiarity with the avatar that they're really close to is going to cause that resonance. So your unique value proposition, I think we're pretty aware of in business, and tying that origin story to the unique value proposition is what's going to really get people's attention, and it's going to hold it for long enough for you to be able to kind of start speaking into their life, which is what you need, because you're going to act as a superhero in this scenario. Let's see. It's a distinct approach. It is a timeless approach, something I didn't really say on here, because you're establishing a heart connection, and that's not going to change. As technology changes and tactics change and strategies can even change, people are always going to resonate with you understanding what they've walked through and you having a solution potentially. And they do get and understand the difference between a Band-Aid. The world is full of people selling you Band-Aids. Mm-hmm. And when you come along and say, no, this cures it, then you've got their attention. Mm-hmm. And Yeah, I am going to zoom over my story because we talked about it. Why is it going to keeping it? Okay. We'll roll with it. I have
Yeah,
entirely
just roll
different
with it.
slides than are appearing. Um, so let's go back. Trust takes two things, according to Stephen I want to say Stephen R. Covey. That was his dad. Stephen M. R. Covey is junior, and he wrote The Speed of Trust, which is a great book. I recommend everyone read it. And it's, if I was going to summarize it, or at least the important key parts of it, I would say that it's people, they need two elements for trust. They need to believe that you have the ability to do something for them that you say you're going to do. And they need to know that you want to or will do something if you could. And so those are the two elements. And it's really difficult. It's really tricky to think about having both. It's, if you plan for it, it's pretty easy. If you don't plan for it, then you can very easily run forward with what you feel your strengths are, right? We want to tell people, I've got this degree and I've got this training and I've got this much experience, and you have fully convinced them that you could help them if you want to. But if you don't convince them also that you want to,
Right.
and if their own personal hang up is not necessarily trusting the world to show up and help them out, right? They're a little bit cynical, or they're a little bit self-aware or self-conscious or whatever. They may not necessarily pick up a vibe from any particular person that says, oh, they're going to step up and they're going to help me out. And that's more about them than it is about you. But how you overcome that is that origin story, right? If you've already told them, hey, I do this because I enjoy doing it, because I feel anointed and powerful to do it. I can bring this to people, this breakthrough, I can help everyone with it all day long. Then they're like, oh, okay. Well, then I trust that you would do it because it excites you and it's not hard for you. And so that's kind of, I think, a key element to this.
Yeah, which really brings up the idea of your unique superpower, right? So bring your superpower forward so that you can help others, by doing what you do best.
Yeah. All right. We will skip ahead in the notes. All right. So grabbing attention. I swear these are completely out of order.
Well, we're talking about grabbing their attention to build trust, and then it's keeping their attention, right?
Yeah, I think we must have uploaded the wrong slides, but we will work with it.
Well, here's keeping attention.
Okay, so in order to keep their attention, we're going to spend a little bit of time articulating why. Like we said, it takes two things. It takes, will I, and will you help me if you wanted, do you want to help me? And that you get that out of that origin story. And then, can you help me? Well, some people want some additional proof of that. Once they satisfy that, yes, then you want to help me. Then I like to do that. I think having a book, there's a connection between authority and author. So having, I like to call it a manifesto book, because people get hung up on, I'm going to give away my top 10 secrets, or this is my process, or my proprietary method, or whatever. You put all that content in there, but think of it yourself as your manifesto, because it's a belief statement. This is what we're going for. We're going for, I do this technique because it produces these results. And here's how I discovered it. A little bit of story in the middle. And it's a good process. And we can come up with a simple, quick 10-chapter book that doesn't have to be terribly expensive, and you can put out there. And 8 out of 10 people you give it to don't read it, and that's great. That's fine. It's almost that way with all books. The goal here is to be able to say, hey, look, I wrote a book. And if you need to know more, check out my book. And send the book to people and they're like, wow, you spent money to send me a $3 book and $2 in postage. So you've spent $5 to acquire me. And I almost feel bad that I didn't read this book because I don't read anybody's books. And so I will go ahead and book an appointment with you,
Well, we often say that, it's not so much that they read the book, it's using the book to open the doors that you want to open, right?
Right.
So whether it's an opportunity to get somebody to meet with you because they feel guilty because you spent $5 on them,
Yeah.
or whether it's to get you on a stage, right? Authorship is a great way to establish that authority.
Absolutely. So I do a lot of ghostwriting books for people. Like I said, it's another one of those things where it's heavy lifting, and it's not heavy for me. It's not a terribly long process. And people are always amazed. They're like, how did you capture my voice? And I'm like, well, that might be, it's another superpower.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can see people saying, oh my goodness, the idea of writing a book, that sounds like so daunting. It sounds like a huge, right? Oh my goodness, right? And those that aren't really writers, that's not their superpower. But to have a ghostwriter that could give you a hand with that and understands you, oh my goodness, priceless.
It is priceless. But people will put a price on it. And some of the prices you'll see out there are insane. Absolutely crazy. Don't pay $20,000. I shouldn't say this as a ghostwriter.
I've seen it higher than that even. Yeah, that's
yeah. No, not for this type of book. If you're Arnold Schwarzenegger and you're writing your third memoir or something, sure, but for this kind of book, a fraction of that cost is very appropriate. And I would say if you've tried to do it yourself and you're getting stuck, then really explore having a ghostwriter, or sometimes you can hire a ghostwriter just to be like a book coach, somebody to kind of give you a layout, give you a process, and give you encouragement and accountability and that sort of thing. So there's a way in there if you really feel like I know I need to do this. And there's definitely a benefit to writing it yourself because writing externalizes our thoughts. There's a process of being able to better state what it is we do when we've actually sat down and written it ourselves. So there is a reason to write it yourself. However, there isn't a reason to be caught for a year or 18 months or anything like that, when I can help you get it done in 10 weeks.
Wow, 10 weeks. Yeah, because I know for those that maybe organization isn't your strong point, right? That's not your superpower, organization. Having somebody to help you kind of structure where you're going, like you said, that accountability partner, so you can keep working on it. I'm sure we have some writers in the audience that have been writing the great American novel for the last 30 years. Why don't you finish it? It's time, right?
Yeah. It's always a good idea to bring somebody else in when you're stuck. And the sooner you bring somebody else in when you're stuck, the smarter you are, right? knowing when to push. If you were in a team sport and you weren't scoring points, and you call a time and you go talk to the coach and you pick a different strategy, or you could just not score points for another 4 or 5 minutes. That's that's what you got to think about. This is all equating to lost money. Why am I? Anytime you can write a check, I remember somebody famous said, actually I think Pedro Tadeo said that if you can write a check, then you don't have a problem.
There you go, right?
Problems are things you can't be solved that way. So, this is more on the kind of just the manifesto idea of you can utilize it. You can
I love this.
repurpose it.
Show your values in action through storytelling within I love the storytelling aspect to it, right? And using your book as an opportunity to really share your values, because when people can relate to your values, right, you've given them another reason to want to work with you.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just checking my other notes to make sure I haven't missed any points that I wanted to say on that. But maintaining relationships through this is an interesting thing. One of the points I mentioned before about having this book written is it can be a source of content that you can repurpose. And I am a firm believer in that. In fact, one of the steps I would take you on writing your book is this essential, officially in the business, they call it 10 commandments, but it's just your core beliefs, and they're declarative statements about I do this technique. I firmly believe in this big domino is another way to maybe put it. Like, if you believe this, or your customers do believe this, and they will respond to this, it's stuff that you've learned over the, test of time stuff, things you would pass on to a new person who was coming in that you were trying to show the ropes to. And if you can find a way to crisply articulate those 10 beliefs, it could be 8 beliefs, then you will have a source for a lifetime of e-newsletters. Is probably the best way, a simple inbox email to help you stay top of mind. So you've given them a book that they don't feel like they ever have the time to read. And then you're going to email them all the time pieces of chapters of the book, and they're going to read it over the next year. And they're going to think, wow, that's so much better than having sat down and read the book. And you'll repurpose it, so it'll be new and different. You'll use different stories and keep it fresh. But anywhere less than 10, and you start feeling like you're harping on one thing, and they stop wanting to open your emails, right? Anything more than 10, it starts feeling like this person is just talking about whatever, right? So 10 is kind of the right number to give you a theme, where you're always bringing it back to, and then story did this, so then I told a story and everything changed. So having
kind of like 10 themes that you're important and core to your values and who you are, and how you look at life and how you solve problems. Is that kind of what we're looking at?
Yes. And you're combining the who you are and how you solve problems to those problems that they're facing based on your, what it is you provide. Mm-hmm. So they all just form a pyramid. They form a pyramid leading to the conclusion that having your solution is the thing they need to do. And the best part about doing this is that you don't have to sell. We put a call to action step in these emails, but they're so subtle. Most people don't really recognize them. It's really doing the work of staying top of mind, doing the work of reminding people that you're a cool person. And you keep them story focused. There's usually a story about that, a different story that you're coming up with all the time. Because I don't know if you're like me, but once you believe something, you tend to see proof everywhere. You're in the grocery store and somebody said something, you're like, aha, that happened because story is important to their life and it touched them differently, And so, we've all had the experience where you created a commercial or something about adopting pets, or, that one got to you for some reason. Most of us are kind of familiar with this in a visual standpoint. And, most of us have also seen a TV commercial where it was just bright flashing lights and annoying sounds. And then whoever the latest star is coming on and saying, I recommend you buy blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't know about you, but those I get me so angry. I mute it. I want to turn away, and then it's still, the bright lights are flashing on the wall because they're changing, they're just trying to grab my attention. And I'm like, you are shouting so hard at me that I start thinking you don't even believe what you're saying. You don't even know. You're so desperate to get my attention and to break through the clutter. And it's like, you don't have to work that hard to break through the clutter, guys. People have a problem and they're staring at their problem. So you're kind of sticking your hand in the way of their problem going, hey, I could help, but I don't have to. And they will stop looking at their problem and start looking at you as maybe a source of someone who can help them with their problem. It's not rocket science to get somebody's attention. It's a matter of being applicable to what they're staring at. Trust is built in real time now. That's where it's something that you need to always be sort of subtly there. And that's where these emails, you could send them every day. People don't get tired of them. They'll be in the habit of opening them up. So you could then one day send an email and say, hey, I'm having a special, and they'll forgive you because you sent them 14 emails in advance of that, just saying, here's this really cool story about this time when I believe this thing. And if you also believe that thing and apply it, it tends to work to help you in your situation. And they're like, that was a cool thing. I really benefited from that. And it was a 1-minute read, and it was easy peasy. And it, you stay in their inbox, you stay top of mind, and they think of you when the next time they suffer that problem. Until that problem is fixed, they're going to suffer from that problem. You're going to be somebody who is kind of just sort of a part of life, and they mean to do business with you. They're going to be eager to do business with you. So you finally send them something and say, hey, I'm 50% off next week or whatever. And like, now is the time. Let's get this solution. I've been meaning to do it. You're an old friend. The hardest part is when you get on the phone, they Zoom with them the very first time. They know you and you're like, hi, let's get to know each other. Like, I already know you.
I had that problem when I was teaching. Yes. Do videos and students would watch them. Hey, Ms. D. And I'm like, have we met?
Yeah.
Yeah. Building that rapport without actually knowing them really is a thing. Yeah.
So
when you're maintaining that relationship, right? We've grabbed their attention. We've drawn them in with our stories, right? And we're maintaining that relationship as we're rolling through with our marketing, doing newsletters, right? Ways to reach out and kind of keep top of mind, maintaining that relationship.
Yeah. And like I said, you can do it with blog posts to a degree. You could do it with a more traditional newsletter where you're putting 4 or 5 articles together and having a better layout design. Some of that is about you knowing your audience. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say that there's one size fits all for what it should look like. But I will say that obviously getting in your inbox is vastly superior to just writing a blog post. So if you wrote a blog post, you want to send them something saying, hey, I have a new blog post. And that sort of thing. But as a content creator myself and a terrible graphic designer. So talk about, when it comes to writing words, I can paint pictures with words. When it comes to putting things on a page so that they look right, that's where we need a graphic designer. That's where my kryptonite lies. So I get a lot of people where I sell them something, for $500 and they say, that was fantastic. I'll pay you $1,000 if you set it up for me graphically. I'm like, no.
And you're like, no, I have a partner for that. Let me introduce you, because please don't make me do that, right? Is that
I'm going to go and give her marketing and start talking to people that I know. It's who's got time to help me out with this? Because I am not.
And I've seen a trend with the newsletters. I don't know if you've noticed it also, but stepping more away from the traditional newsletters, like you said, where there's multiple articles, and more like a one thought email, like you said, whether they're doing it one a day, once a week, right? Rather than putting it all into one newsletter with multiples, you'll see them sending more multiples of emails, separating those concepts into separate emails, basically.
Yeah. I think some of that is that the world is getting more clip oriented or whatever,
I always say the attention span of a goldfish.
Right. Yeah. If we are lucky. I couldn't believe the statistics when I saw that human beings now have an attention span lower than a goldfish. It's scientifically proven. But yeah, it's and also being consistent and showing up. If you're emailing consistently Monday and Friday or consistently Wednesday or whatever, just showing up consistently doing the same thing, it shows that you're legitimate. And if it takes people 2 months of seeing an email from you every Wednesday to go, oh, wow, they're still in business, they must be making money, right?
Sometimes it's just sticking around for the longest, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a little bit of it. You gain a little bit of credibility just from that. I really had some great quotes in here but I sent the wrong slides, so that's okay. This is going to say wrap up, but we're going to talk a lot more, so don't worry about it. I just wanted to kind of take us back to the context of this whole thing. So we're marrying unique value proposition to origin story. We need to do that work, and we need to do it in a place like a bio or your profile on LinkedIn or something like that, right? So at Giver Marketing, you're going to be doing prospecting. That's kind of the idea is that as you talk to people in real life or online, as you comment on their LinkedIn post or whatever like that, and they go, oh, this person might be interesting. They check out your profile and they're going to come back and they're going to see your page. And hopefully, if you've done this right, your bio is going to be one of the most interesting things about you. it might be, sometimes people are like, oh, well, I went to a prestigious school, and so all my classmates want to do business with me. I'm like, great, make sure that's at the top of the page. But for most of us, it's this story of my breakthrough, where I came from, what I did, and now I do, and that shows your legitimacy. That gets the attention and stuff. And then if you have a book, if you have that manifesto written where you're like, this is how I conduct business and this is why it works, so that they could check it out if they wanted to. And they set it on their shelf and they look at it once in a while and go, oh, I should really read that guy's book. Some people do. I do. I read people's books. I'm autodidactic, so I am capable of. And when I became a coach, I realized that a lot of what we do is we give people a book and they don't read it, and so you sell them a $3,000 coaching package, and then you walk them through your book that they could read for themselves and hold themselves accountable to. But paying money to you helps them finally do it. Sometimes that's the secret sauce. If that's who we are, then great. Know that about yourself. Pay the $3,000, become a better person, right?
Absolutely. It's an investment, right? Once we've invested money in something, now it has more value. So now we have to pay attention to it and we have to love on it and nurture it, right? Once you've invested $3,000, you're not going to not show up to your coaching appointment, right?
Right. Yeah. And if we know that about ourselves, I know people who use it in reverse. They're like, oh, I was going to create a presentation and I got 10 people that were going to show up in a room and listen to me do this presentation. And I realized the stakes weren't high enough. I couldn't bring myself to do it. So I had to stream it online, and I had to get 1,000 people signed up to watch me do it. And then I got, oh man, I better create this presentation. That's just kind of what activates their juices. Their creativity flows when they put a demand on it. Like, I'm going to stand in front of 1,000 people and whistle if I can't get this presentation created. Know what it is that motivates you. That's a good little
That's true. Right. And everybody's motivated differently. So yeah, as you get to know yourself, right? If you're motivated by deadlines, right? Give yourself a deadline, even if there isn't really one. Create one.
Yeah, I am motivated by non-interruptions when it comes to creating. So I'm kind of a Pomodoro guy. That helps me a lot, to set a timer and give myself permission to do nothing but do that for 20 minutes. And when the alarm goes off, then I don't do it. I do anything else. But I have to work in sprints, and that really helps me get it done. Then step 3 is that. So step 1 is your origin story, UVP. Step 2 is getting that book so that people can see that you're legit. And step 3 is appearing in their inbox consistently. And the key to that consistency is the 10 commandments. It is things that hopefully are basically chapters in your book, because you're hopefully wrote in a whole story about why you do it that way in your book. And now we're just going to constantly remind people of it, but it's not pestering, because it's very fun and lighthearted and a quick, easy read, and it's not salesy. And people will open that email. And it humanizes you. It's natural voice. Doesn't make you sound like I'm preaching from on high. There's a lot of keys to this. There's a lot of elements of good story that we can breed into it that would take, I could do a whole hour on effectively writing stories, but.
Well, we'll bring you back for that one. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about whatever you've overcome, right? You've shown that you've been there, done that, right? And there's a certain amount of humbling with that authenticity when you can do that, right? So you can't really be on high, like I'm better than you, at the point that you're literally saying, I remember being where you are, right? That's a humble thing to admit sometimes.
Right. Well, it's absolutely true. You're starting the whole thing telling people reasons why they should disqualify you if they were uppity or whatever like that. And it's good, and it does, right? So I tell people this all the time in the writing world. Make sure your back cover description reflects what they're going to read inside. And make sure that you dress in a way, if you're hand selling a book or whatever like that, that represents the way they're going to, because there's nothing worse than sending somebody to Amazon and they buy the book and then they didn't like it. And so now you've ripped them off for $3 whole, and they're going to go on. It's the person who's for sure going to review you. It's so much easier to collect bad reviews than good reviews. And most of the time, it's not a bad book. Most of the time, it just wasn't the book they were looking for.
Right.
And so, I tell people all the time when it comes to, even if it's a $10 book or something like that, don't sell them what they weren't expecting. You've got to find a way to make sure that they weed themselves out before they buy it, before they make a purchase. I'm happy to sell to 1 in 10 people, as long as that 100% of the people who buy it get something from it. And the 9 people who wouldn't, the 90 people who wouldn't have gotten something from it said, oh, I don't need that, and put it back on the shelf. Great. That's part of marketing, right? It's attracting the right people.
The right people.
And that's one of the reasons that having authenticity come through in your marketing, and why we're doing this with authenticity, is so that you are attracting customers who are going to vibe with you and going to get the most out of your help. And people are self-selecting out who would be disappointed or annoyed or whatever else. And it's not because you're doing anything wrong. It just wasn't quite what they were expecting. So, so that authentic right up front, hitting them with, I've been where you are. And they go, I was never there. Great. Keep scrolling. That's awesome.
Right. That's not your tribe. That's okay. You want to attract your tribe, right? And repel the ones that aren't part of your tribe, that aren't going to vibe with you, right? It's kind of like, don't get mad at an apple because it's not an orange. That's what I always say, right?
Absolutely.
An apple is a great apple, but if you're expecting it to be an orange, taste like an orange, act like an orange, it's not going to work, right? It doesn't mean that it's not fantastic, but they're 2 different things. So you want to make sure that you're going for the right people.
Yes, that's key. And so that leaves us with a real question. I don't know if I ever put that on the next slide, but we'll ignore it if we don't. One of the big questions we have when we think about outsourcing something like content is, I've just preached about how it has to be authentic to me. And then you're telling me you can write this for me, authentic to me and in my voice. And like, well, yes, I can, because stories are fairly universal techniques, and they're going to be your stories. I am going to spend time on you. Like, if I have a client, I'm spending an hour a month at least help getting their stories, finding out what they're doing, what's exciting to them. We've already sat down a whole bunch and gotten their manifesto written with their 10 big, I believe, statements that we're centering these things on. And, and then I write enough, and you and I can bounce back and forth enough that I'm capturing your voice effectively, so that you can outsource the heavy lifting of doing the writing. And you might need to go through and go, okay, well, I want to tweak this because it sounds a little bit more like me, or whatever like that. So much easier to edit, and then you post it, and you don't have to give me login information, and I'm not going to be HubSpot for you or anything like that. I'm just doing the heavy lifting of making sure that you have content to post wherever you feel it's most effective to reach your people.
Right. And there's an art to storytelling, right? Like you said, maybe we'll get you to come back and talk about that in more detail. But just the art, right? If that's not your natural instinct, right? Some people are fantastic storytellers. They just understand the grab attention, they keep the story going. And by the time they get to the end, we're like, oh, right? Some people just have that natural just instinct on how to do it well. And there's the others that are like struggling the whole time, right? Like, well, I don't know which details are important. What's the story? What format should it be? Right. This is where it's nice to have an expert in the room that can take your stories and put them in a way that makes sense to the audience. Right.
Yeah. There was another quote, Covey quote, that I was going to throw in. That a person has integrity when there is no gap between intent and behavior. When he or she is whole, seamless, the same, inside and out. I call it congruence, and it is congruence, not compliance, that will ultimately create credibility and trust. So
Ooh, that's a lot to unpack right there. Woo.
Yeah.
I love that though, right? When you're in alignment, right, then it all makes sense. And I like what you've got right now with the conclusion. Trust is paramount for scalability, engagement, and conversion in today's market.
Yeah.
Right?
And trust is built on authenticity, and it's built on communicating your value in a way that that doesn't repulse people unless they wouldn't vibe with you anyway. So I think that's if I find my mouse. Yeah. So this approach, this 1, 2, 3 approach, we've recapped it before.
Here we go.
Yeah. So you can, yeah, this is the old slide. So don't scan this because I think it's probably dead.
Oh,
I
well,
fixed it.
do you want to put a new one up? If you got it, we'll put it up.
Yeah. Let's see if we can.
It's like, I'm going to scan this one and see where it goes, and that'll tell us whether or not we're going anywhere.
Yeah.
And we can always pull that one down. Well, that took me to Calendly, actually.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Right.
I got it to pull up. So there you go. We're going to leave that up there.
Okay.
So if you want to book a 30-minute copywriting free consult, Zoom or phone call, scan that because it works. I know. I just tested it. I got it on my right now. So book an appointment with Andy and talk to him a little bit about your narrative, your story, right? How are you using that to help build authenticity, to help build trust with your audience and who you're wanting to bring in, right? Your tribe that you're trying to attract, right? Talk a little bit about what that looks like. Maybe you've been thinking about doing a book. Maybe you need help with some copywriting for your social media because it's just, you're not sure where to go with it. It doesn't feel like you, right? Have a conversation with Andy. Get on his calendar because he's been doing this for a long time. And obviously he understands how stories work.
Yeah. I don't know if you want me to send one to you. I did create I can put in the chat a link to a DIY origin story.
Ooh,
kind of thing.
that would be great. Let's drop that in the chat. He promised you if you stuck around to the end, he'd have something for you. So there it is.
Yeah.
So this is a do-it-yourself for what?
For origin story. Kind of talks about working on your origin story. It doesn't come up with obviously if somebody was going to sit down with me, we could really create the origin story. But which isn't even something I was really necessarily talking about this particular time, other than we talked about origin story, but yeah, sometimes just having somebody coach you through getting your origin story down is a big step on the way to.
Absolutely. Just kind of get you thinking in the right direction, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. Let's see. Here we go. All right. So this is our do-it-yourself origin story. And we'll drop that link right there in the chat so everybody can get access to that. But check that out. It gives you some place to start if you've been thinking about origin story, if you haven't created one, or maybe you've created one, but it's not really feeling like you. And as we go through life, right, we are different seasons and changes, right? So sometimes we need to come back and revisit it, right? We're not the same person. I know me, I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. I hope not. I'm hoping I've learned and grown since then, right? So if you haven't taken a look at your origin story recently, you might want to step back and, like you said, take a deeper look, that holistic approach that Andy was talking about, where you really say, okay, how did I get to where I am today? What were my milestones along the way? What were my impacts? What really changed me? What aha moments have I had through, right? And how can I help people? I love that approach. So last chance, go ahead and scan that before I pull it off of the screen. 3, 2, 1. All right, there it is. So Andy, make sure when you book that appointment with Andy, tell him that you saw him on the Giver Marketing Show and that you wanted to talk to him a little bit more about copywriting and stories and all that fun stuff we talked about today. You're in for a treat. Now, I know you were looking for quotations. Did we hit all the quotations you wanted today, Andy?
Yeah.
You had some good ones in there, too. I'm like, ooh, I need like a half hour to unpack that one.
Yeah.
You got us thinking. I love that. And storytelling, it's such a great way to really build that rapport with people, right? They understand who you are, where you've come from. They've got a reason to want to talk to you, right? So building that rapport is all about building relationships.
Yeah.
Wow, right? It's just like, whew, you shared a lot with us. We might pull you back, and you willing to come back and talk to us again about storytelling?
Sure.
I love it. Wonderful. Looking forward to that. We'll have you back on the show again. Thank you so much, Andy, for coming and sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah,
You've
no
got
problem.
a superpower. And so we love that you're sharing it with us. Now, just so anybody who's not familiar with Giver Marketing, on Wednesdays, right? So Tuesday is our broadcast. So we have our Giver Marketing broadcast where we're always bringing in experts to talk about their superpowers related to marketing. On Wednesdays, we have networking for marketers. It's also media and anybody in that kind of space. Come join us. Don't be a lonelypreneur. Sometimes it's lonely at the top, even if you have a company, right? Everybody you're talking to are your employees rather than having other people that are CEOs also that you can talk to in the marketing space. So come hang out with us. Networking for Marketers is Wednesdays, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern. Just go to givermarketing.com/networking. Register once, save the link, and come hang out with us. This is open to all networkers. You don't have to be a Giver Marketing member. This is our give back. This is where we like to invite people in. Don't be a stranger. Come make friends. Have fun with us. Learn how to collaborate with us. Let's have a good time together because we love having everybody get together. Thank you so much, Andy.
No problem.
We'll see you next time. All right.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, y'all.